Welcome to the Swedish Movie Critic. Today I'm going to talk about Top Gun Maverick, this year's big box office hit, directed by Josef Kosinski. I have enjoyed his previous movies, Tron Legacy and Oblivion, also with Tom Cruise. I think he's a very good director, and I think he's a good choice for directing a sequel to an old 80s movie. The first Top Gun was released in 1986. I've seen it twice and only once before seeing the sequel to keep it more fresh in my mind. And I think it's a good action movie from the 80s. It certainly has that 80s vibe and very cool action sequences, mainly because they're made of real footage and models. The effects still work quite good in it, but I think the story is very basic and simplistic. So it's a good, entertaining 80s movie, but at the same time maybe not the greatest one from that era, but it certainly has a cult following. So I was excited to see Top Gun Maverick. I saw the trailers for it, and it seemed very cool, made in a very realistic way and shot very practical. I also read reviews before, and it was hailed as one of the best movies of the year, so I was quite hyped to see it in the cinema. And I was very pleasantly surprised by it. And Tom Cruise is back as ace pilot, Maverick, and this time the story is a little bit different because it takes place many years after the first one. Maverick in this one is the teacher of a group of young new pilots who is tasked to take part in this impossible mission to destroy an uranium facility in a rogue nation. And I think what sets it apart from the first one is that you have a way better story structure. The script is well written, the characters are well written, you just get enough of story to keep you engaged, and the story focuses on the mission. So the pilots have to train this specific course with this specific time to execute the mission and at the same time get back home. So you have a very well put together story structure. We also have Miles Teller in one of the leading roles. He plays Rooster. Rooster is the son of the first Top Gun movie's character Goose, who flew with Maverick and gets killed in a training exercise. Rooster is his son. And I think the relationship between Tom Cruise and Miles Teller is basically the heart of the story. And I think it's a very cool way to honor the original and at the same time building upon it to make something new here in the sequel. I think the best sequel movies are the ones that honors the original, at the same time builds upon that and makes another great movie. And at the same time enhance the first movie. And I think the relationship between Maverick and Rooster is a good example of that. You get much more depth to the characters. Maverick feel more like a realistic character, and as I say, Miles Teller is really good as Goose's son. You can really feel what he was going through, what happened to his father with Maverick, and that tension is really good for the story, I think. We also have Jennifer Connelly as the love interest, Penny. Penny is a character that's just mentioned in the first one, but you never see her. And I think she has good chemistry with Tom Cruise as well. And it's a nice romantic side plot for the movie. I don't know if this is a subtle detail, but when you first introduced Jennifer Connelly, you hear David Bowie's Let's Dance in the background. And I always think about the movie Labyrinth from 1986, a movie with David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly, and I just think that's a cool nod, just referring to another 80s movie. What I think sets Top Gun Maverick apart from other action movies today is that so much is made practical directly in the camera. And you have these amazing action sequences and training sequences when the actors are in the fighter jets and they're really up in the air with, of course, real pilots flying, but at the same time they are filming themselves acting out scenes. And it makes for really realistic and cool effects. Action sequences are filmed with real airplanes. They use CGI sparsely where they need to. Besides that, a lot of it is made in camera and it looks gorgeous. It's shot by Claudio Miranda, who also worked with Kosinski on Oblivion, and he's also the cinematographer for The Life of Pi, which is a gorgeous movie. They were up to over 800 hours of film footage to cut down for the flight sequences, and it looks perfect. The actors actually had to direct themselves once they were up in the air because there was no way for the director to communicate with them. So they had to act out scenes, and sometimes they'd be up for a long time and they get back and they couldn't use the footage and so on. So it really is a really practical, cool work. If you see closely in some scenes, you notice they bang their heads in the canopy, in the cockpit and stuff like that. And all that is made as it happens in the air, spontaneously. And it gives this real feeling to the action sequences. We also have a great score by Hans Zimmer, one of my absolute favorite movie composer. He wrote the soundtrack for Lion King, June. He won Oscars for both of those movies. Gladiator, just an amazing composer. It's combined with Harold Faltermeyer, who wrote the original soundtrack for the 80s movie, and make this cool retro soundtrack, I think, because you hear Faltermeyer's themes, that's very aspiring theme, this very heroic theme, and at the same time it's combined with this more modern version made by Hans Zimmer. So I think it's a cool mix in the soundtrack. And it's cool that they included Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone from the first movie here as well. I think when the movie starts you really get into the perfect 80s feeling. So overall, a very well-constructed, well-made movie. It's a sequel to this 80s movie, and I think it's made in that same sort of spirit. It captures that style of that era very well, I think. I know Tom Cruise used a lot of his team from the Mission Impossible movies, where he has trained for many years to make as many things, many stunts in camera as possible. So it's really cool to see it integrated in this Top Gun sequel as well. It's a perfect match. If I have some complaints from the movie, well, maybe it has a very basic and simplistic view of the US military in the world. It could be interesting if it made this rogue nation a little bit more grey. The conflict is very one-sided in that way. But I think at the same time it's in the vein of this 80s style. This mission where they're supposed to go through this narrow canyon to an exhaust vent and blow it up, this uranium base, it's very reminiscent of Star Wars A New Hope, where Luke has to fly down the trench of the Death Star and fire missile into an exhaust port. Pretty much the mission in Top Gun Maverick. But I mean, it's a fun nod as well. Star Wars still influences movies, and I have a lot of love for Star Wars, so it's cool, I think. I would absolutely recommend Top Gun Maverick. It's one of the best movies this year. If you have the specs for it, I would absolutely recommend that you see it in 4K. It was released a couple of weeks ago on a 4K Ultra HD disc, and it looks amazing. I've collected 4K disc for about 2 years now, and this is one of the best I've seen. So many shots are shot in IMAX with an IMAX camera, so it looks incredible in 4K with all the colors and the sharpness, and the sound mix sounds incredible when you hear the fighter jets landing, taking off, everything, explosions. It sounds incredible. So have you seen Top Gun Maverick? What do you think? Let me know below and comment. If this is the first time to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you so much for your support for my first video on Avatar last week. This is a kind of a new channel, so I'm very thankful for the response I got. So nice to hear from you. So yeah, next week I will go to the premiere of Avatar 2 here in Sweden, and you will get my review of that movie very shortly after that, as soon as I can. So thank you once again for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.